Hi guys, Future Fortified here. Just wanted to make this little segment at the beginning to kind of apologize. I unfortunately didn't realize until after the video had been recorded that I had left the follower icon from the stream on in the bottom right. Normally I would have turned that off, but I completely forgot about it. And as I said, unfortunately, I did the entire video. And once the video was completed, it wasn't only until I started putting it into the editing program that I realized that I had the follower notification on. So I said, really sorry about that. Hopefully it's not going to be too distracting for you throughout the video. I'll just need to make sure that next time before I record that I definitely have all the overlays off and everything to, not contrast with the actual recording of the video. But as I said, hopefully it's not too distracting and hopefully you still enjoy it. So yeah, I once again, I really do apologize. I'll try to make sure not to do that next time. Hope you enjoy the video. So today I'm asking the question, so what is South of Midnight? So this is a game developed by Compulsion Games, who you may know that did Contrast, all the way back to the PlayStation 4, and We Happy Few, which is a little bit more well known than Contrast. Either way, both games, despite what their criticisms or whatever are, pretty unanimous is their art style and aesthetic are damn near gorgeous, right? You know, they are very unique to themselves. Compulsion Games have really nailed having a nice aesthetic feel to their games. And South of Midnight is no different. This is a game that is more focused on stop motion, looking a bit more along the lines of things like Coraline and stuff like that. So this is a kind of an action-adventure game, but a lot of its focus is more on story, looking into Southern America folklore and stuff like that. So it's definitely a very unique game, and its main appeal is the stop motion aesthetic and all things like that. So it's definitely really interesting, and it's something that I can definitely show you, and we'll get into all that. But first things first, as per usual, options menu. And I'm happy to say that I feel the options menu is actually really good. Let's first of all go to the graphics options. You've got image calibration for brightness, you've got window mode, so you've got full screen, borderless, or windowed. Obviously, you've got your resolution options. One thing is I'm not normally a fan of this type of style of changing resolution. I like a drop down. It just makes things a lot easier. For example, if I want to go to 1080p, I gotta click a few times. If I want to go a completely different resolution, I've got to keep clicking. I'm not a big fan of doing that, but that's a little nitpick. You've got an auto configuration here that will just auto-config the system for you. Motion blur off or on, I turn that off because I'm just not interested in motion blur at all. Upscaling is a bit weird. We've got TAAU, which I'm actually not sure what that is. I'm running AMD graphics card, so I was expecting FSR, but instead I've got TAAU. Apparently, this game does have DLSS, but again, because I don't have an NVIDIA graphics card, it doesn't display, but it's there for you if you need upscaling. Happy to say that the game does perform really well. I've had no need for any upscaling at all. The game runs above 60 FPS, no issue. I think the game is was created on Unreal Engine 4, which probably explains why the game runs as smooth as it does. Doesn't have any of the Unreal Engine 5 jank. You got VSync, you can turn that off and on, and a frame rate limiter as well if you've got any issues. And then you've got the graphics options of shading, anti-aliasing, view distance, shadow, post-process, texture, effects, and foliage. I've got everything on Ultra. As I said, I've had no real problems. The game is perfectly fine, runs well. One thing I'd say is about anti-aliasing, I'm not too sure what anti-aliasing it's using. The game doesn't say what anti-aliasing it's using. It just is going through the graphics quality. Again, are you using FXAA? Are you using TAA? I have no idea. I don't know what anti-aliasing they're using. The game looks fine, but it would be nice to know what anti-aliasing is being used for the game, or at least having the option of what anti-aliasing to use. Another thing that I keep talking about is with all this space here, it would be nice to have a kind of a preview of how this affects the game. It'd be nice to see if I turn down shading quality, how much does the shading get affected? Shadows, how bad do the shadows look on medium compared to high? I like having little preview screens, and I feel like if you're going to have this much space on the options menu, you might as well just have it, right? And in regards to the kind of text over here, there's not really a lot to be said on it. It just tells you what kind of performance impact it has, but for the most part, it just says GPU performance. It doesn't really go into a lot of detail into what these particular options are. I mean, some of them are obviously a bit, you know, pretty self-explanatory. Foliage, for example, obviously it's foliage effects and all things like that. Just, you know, always nice to have a little bit more detail here and there. So that's the graphics options there. As I said, for the most part, pretty good. I couldn't really think of any graphics options that it was missing. We'll start going through this in order, I think. So I've got controls here, fully rebindable keys, perfect, no real complaints here. I did have an issue where there was these two, where these were both showing as E, but I've rebound them now because I was having issues where I was trying to interact with something and then accidentally I would start using the grapple ability, which would make fights a little bit obnoxious. But as I said, the game gives you full ability to be able to customize everything, so that's fantastic to see. Another great option is the fact you can even customize your controller. As I said, I really enjoy when games implement this. If you're going to have a controller, I really like the fact you have the ability to customize it, so that's all there for you. So if you're playing this on controller, you can customize that. I am going to be playing this on mouse and keyboard. You've got your sensitivity options here for your controller as well as mouse. I've cranked this up quite high. I found at 100% the sensitivity was very low. I had to keep, you know, scraping the mouse across my mouse pad in order to keep moving, so I had to bump this up quite high. 136% is roughly how I found it. You may feel the same as me. I rock about 800 DPI, so that might be a factor there. So if you're somebody that's also on 800 DPI, you may want to crank the sensitivity up. However, if you're on a much higher DPI, this may not affect you as badly. You got alternative inputs here now, so you've got fast hold, so enable to disable the fast hold option. Force walk keyboard, so either can hold or I can toggle to just press, so she'll just keep moving if I press it. Always sprint off or on. There's not really much like difference here. There's no stamina system, so running continuously is actually not an issue. And the more I played it, the more I've actually feel that maybe having auto sprint isn't the worst thing, but sometimes you will have some platforming sections, so thinking about it is actually best not to have this on, in my eyes. Glide, you can turn to hold or to toggle. I'm just used to holding for gliding, so that's just how I have it, but if you're not a fan of holding, then you can just change it to toggle. The gust of wind y-axis, I haven't actually encountered this yet, so this is all new. This I have, which is the war run, where you can just reverse things. Now, one thing I will say, we'll get into more with the other options, is that this is a very, very highly detailed options game. There's so much to customize, there's so much to go through. It's really great to see. So you've got language settings here, so you've got your audio and text to change what language you so desire. Subtitles on or off. Directional indicator to tell you who's talking, which is, you know, always nice to see. Captions, so that you can, you know, have extra additional stuff like radio buzz and all things like that if you want that in your game. And then you're able to customize the font size, the font color, and all things like that. Now, one thing I think is a bit of a disappointment here is how, again, no preview. It would be nice to be able to see the ability to change the subtitles. So if I want to change the subtitles, I'm going to have to go in the options menu, change them, go into the game, see how they are, change them and all things like that. You know, like white, black, yellow, like, you know, okay, I changed yellow. How yellow is yellow? Can I read it? I don't know. I'm going to have to change it, then go back in and then change it again, you know. It would be nice to have a preview here to just have a quick summary of, okay, this is what the font size looks like, this is what the color looks like, are you happy with this, yes or no? Because for the most part, like for example, Cure subtitles, this isn't actually a preview of whether or not you turn subtitles off or on. This is just a clip, so it doesn't really do anything for me here. So if you have the ability to have something like this here, I don't really see why you wouldn't have the ability to add something here either. Just find that a bit strange. Letterbox, you can turn that on, and also whether or not subtitles will be bold or anything like that. So little quick customizations there. Audio options, you got dynamic range, nice little options here to tell you what they're recommended for. Now I've chose wide because I play my games on headphones, but if you have a different setup to me, then you can change the dynamic range based on that. So quite well detailed. I quite like that it does give you specific recommendations for depending on how you're listening to your game. You can turn mono off or on, and full audio sliders that are also great to see. As well as the fact, which I find a bit interesting, is that you can turn off the lead vocals for the music. Personally, I don't see why not. The music is definitely the highlight of this game. I highly recommend to keep this on, but again, if you really want to just not listen to the vocals, then you can just turn that off, but I personally would say that you're doing yourself a disservice by turning that off. We've looked at graphics, so gameplay now. This is where we start going more into the heavily customizable options for how to play the game exactly how you want. You can turn camera shake off or on. The camera shake, I haven't found it to be too egregious, so I've kept it on. I haven't had really any problems with it. In fact, I've kind of forgotten about it, to be honest. So it's not that bad. Camera follow, you can change how the camera tracks you. Stop motion effects. So for me, this is the whole appeal of the game, is the stop motion. But if you don't like it, or it's just not your thing, then you can turn it off and you can just have a more smooth game. Again, I think you're doing the game a disservice by doing this. The stop motion, I think, is fantastic in-game. As I said, when we play it, I'll demonstrate it, but if you want to turn that off, you can. However, as the game does state, it does not affect cutscenes, so the cutscenes will still be stop motion, so it doesn't completely remove it. It is just for the sake of the gameplay. Vibrations and audio cues and all things like that. Traversal, you can have your tutorials on or off. Obviously, I've turned tutorials on because it's my first time playing the game. You got the strand. Now, this I find quite interesting. So your strand is your typical, guidance point, your little waypoint of where things are. And you can actually customize how this plays out. So you can display the distance. So you can either have it so that it only travels a certain length, or you can just have it go straight to the objective. You can have it that it just comes and goes, or you can have it remain permanently on your screen. Which are, really cool customization options here for stuff like that. You can have the camera shift, so you can change it so that as soon as you press middle mouse, it will shift the camera towards the strand. I've turned that off because I felt that feature was just going to be really annoying. Audio beacon, so it helps you a directional orientation if you're struggling a bit with seeing, so you get a bit of the audio cues. You got the beacon volume, because it does speak to you, so you can change the volume, how the beacon is, the pitch. There's so much. There's a lot here, and this is just the strand, the guiding strand to guide you to your objective. This is all customizing for that. I think that's really neat. I've not really seen anything like this before in terms of any form of guidance. Now, for the most part, the game is linear, so having this kind of guidance isn't too essential. It is very good, though, for using in terms of trying to find collectibles and all things like that. Crouton guiding strand, this is just a little character you use. Same thing here. Edging object timer. So I've got on default how long they can stay weaved in. So this is like platforming objects that you can go on to. Now, if you want to make the game easier for yourself, you can make it so that the timer's a lot longer. However, I feel the timer is perfectly fine. I've not had any issues with, oh god, I gotta get to this platform quick before it runs out or anything like that. Like, it's perfectly fine. This one I found a bit weird. You can actually skip chase sequences. Again, if you're coming from this as a complete story perspective, if you just completely just want to embrace the story and you're not as fussed on the gameplay, you can turn off the chase sequences, although I find that a bit odd, because I feel that if you're going to be a person that skips part of the game, like, wouldn't you just be better off watching a YouTube video of the game? It's just a bit confusing to me. Maybe if you're somebody replaying the game and you just weren't a fan of the chase sequences, I guess it's nice to have that option to skip them if they're just not your thing. I guess you can see it from that perspective. Combat, you can have, you can adjust your lock on, so you can have auto switch targeting, which I've left on, only on-screen enemies. So you enable disable the lock on option to switch between on-screen enemies or not. You can skip combat. Again, it's an interesting feature to add into the game. I assume they're trying to go from this is, if this is your first time playing the game and you really just want to embrace the story, you can skip this. It's the same with the boss option. You can actually skip bosses. So you have options here to basically skip majority of the game. I know where they're coming from with this, and I know they're trying to make this accessible. So it is neat to have a feature like that in it. But I just find it a bit odd, because again, I want to play the game, and it's a bit weird to find a game that gives you options to skip the game. You get what I mean? But yeah, that's all there for you if you so desire. Interface, so you got the text size. Again, no visual indicator, so it's a bit hard to really see how that plays out without going into the options, out of the options, check the game, go back in the options, so on and so forth. Persistent dot, enable, disable the display of persistent dot, so you just have that on the screen, but again, a third-person game, you don't really need a dot, but it's there if you need it. HUD scaling. I believe this... Yeah, so again, we have the picture here, but it doesn't change based on how I'm changing the HUD scale, which is a bit disappointing. Again, it would be nice to have some sort of visual indicator on that. You got your notifications here, display timer, HUD display. So again, a lot of options there. Accessibility, very great accessibility here. You've got some colorblind modes here. If you obviously have a form of colorblindness, then that's all there for you to mess around with and change. Menu narration if you're struggling with seeing, text size, HUD scaling, and then we're back to navigational things like that. So as I said, there is a lot to customize here. It is a very accessible game, and that's really great to see. There's a lot of accessibility options for this game, so it really is making it so that anyone can play this game. And it really does feel that this is a type of game that anyone can play, essentially. It is quite a casual game, but I don't want to say that as a way of deterring it. Like, it's a casual game in a good sense. Now, one thing I did also want to show as well, hopefully this won't alter too much. So, when you go on new game, you've got these difficulty options. Now, you've got your standard stuff. So, you've got story mode, easy mode, balanced, and advanced. So, these are, your standard difficulties. Now, one thing I thought was really interesting is there was a custom mode in which you can completely customize how difficult or how easy you want to make the game. So, I don't know, maybe you find the boss fights too easy, so you want to maybe increase the boss damage. Maybe you're a bit annoying with how much the enemies do damage, you want to reduce them. You can make yourself invincible, You can completely customize how easy or how difficult you would like to make the game. And I think that's great. I think that's such a cool feature. No. Get out. But yeah. So that's all the options menu. Very extensive, but it's a very extensive options menu. So I'm very happy with it. I think it's brilliantly accessible for people. So let's just jump into the game now. So I'm going to press continue. I'm not too sure exactly where it's going to put me because this game... Okay. Apologies about that. I had a bit of an issue there. The game kind of conked out, but it wasn't... Well, not the game itself. The game has actually been running perfectly fine, but I've just been having issues with my PC a bit. So it did crash, but I'm not putting that against the game. As I said, the game has been running really well, and I don't really have a lot of problems with the performance, in all honesty. As I said, the game is super smooth. I've had no actual issues regarding the game. Any issues I've had, it's just been more on my end, on my system. But here's the game. First things first, it looks really gorgeous. Let's just get that out of the way. It looks amazing. Look how colourful a lot of this is. Now, this is kind of a... It's not really post-apocalyptic. It's kind of a new, kind of see like the upside down in Stranger Things, I guess, where it's like an alternative world. But also, this place has been hit with a hurricane. So it's a mixture of kind of post-hurricane disaster and then a bit of like some more supernatural elements. Like obviously, these vine things here, these aren't natural. These are more something a part of that world. But as I said, despite how the game is, in terms of like the setting, it's really colourful and it's really gorgeous as well. So we're going to be doing some platforming here. So this is quite a fair bit of the section of the game, some platforming. So there's going to be story elements in this game. So I'm just going to flat out say you're probably going to encounter some spoilers. Unfortunately, that is just unavoidable. It's a very story-based game. We're probably going to encounter some spoilers here and there. I'm not too far in. I believe I am on chapter 5, I think. I'm not too sure exactly how many chapters there are, but I'm not too far. Throw Crouton. This is my little buddy, Crouton. Let's throw him over.
I think he's enjoying that a bit too much.
And then I can swap over to him. Aha! And then unravel that. Perfect. So this game is a mixture, as I said, of platforming and combat. So, for example, we've got double jump, you've got a glide, you've got like a dodge ability here. And one thing I would say is the movement in this game is very smooth. Incredibly smooth. I really like how the platforming actually works. And bear in mind, I'm somebody that doesn't enjoy platforming in and of itself. So when I've got a game that has quite smooth platforming, you know, it's pretty impressive. You know, I get kind of a bit of a Ori and the Blind Forest type of deal here. So I'm not too sure exactly where I'm meant to go. This is a weird-ass statue. So look at this. Look at the scale of that. It looks amazing. So I said it's like a stop-motion game. So when I go into an idle animation, you can probably see it a bit here that her animations are a bit stop-motion. And for the most part, I think it's really not that distracting. I was a bit worried when I saw that this game was going to be a stop-motion game, that it was going to be a bit distracting or a bit hard to play a lot of. I'm gonna dodge you. Like, for example, when I played Spider-Man 2 and you use the option for Miles Morales, where you get him onto the Spider-Verse skin, I could only play that for about, I'd say about 10-20 minutes before I had to say, yeah, I can't play anymore because I'm feeling a bit sick. This game actually doesn't have this issue. It runs very smooth. The stop motion isn't super distracting. And that's pretty good because with a game that has combat like this, you don't want any distractions like that. You want smooth gameplay, and I feel this game has achieved that. So you have like these abilities here. So for example, I've got my Q here, so that means this person will take more damage now. I've got a pull ability, so I pulled him in. I've also got a push ability as well, but I wasn't able to do that because he had an unblockable move. The only way to really avoid damage in this game is by dodging, like this. But what's cool is that when you dodge, you actually do damage. I'm gonna dodge off. I actually died. Huh. That's the first time I've actually died in this game. I've never seen that death animation. I promise you I've not died. Of course, when I'm trying to do commentary while fighting, I've ended up dying. Yeah, I'm still getting used to trying to do commentary and playing at the same time, but hopefully I'll get a bit better at that. But yeah, so I've just died there. That's the first time I've actually died. I was actually going to say that I've never actually been in a position where I've been in a bit of danger, but I'm glad I didn't say that now because that would have made me look pretty bad. So you got like a pull, you got a push ability, you've got an ability that makes you do extra damage to characters with your Q, and you've also got the use of Crouton as well that can mind control other characters. As you can see here, by him, when you kill an enemy, they're not just dead. You have to unravel them to finish them off. But the game is pretty generous with its timing. I've not really been in a position where I've taken too long and it's like, oh shit, they've come back. I've always had enough time to unravel them. Pull you in, hit you, Q. Now, in regards to the combat, I think while it's a bit smooth, a bit of a problem with the combat is that it's quite basic. So outside of the ability uses, which the abilities are, you know, pretty unique. I quite like how different and unique the abilities are. They do fit very well with the game. The problem is that the combat is a bit simplistic. Like, for example, here, in order to do melee combat, it's really just left-clicking 5 times. Like, that's really the only combo you can do. There's also a range ability that I can do here if I hold this. But I haven't found that range ability to be super useful, so I haven't used it a whole lot. Especially when the melee combat is, you know, this often feels like it just does more damage. But yeah, the combat in itself, it's good, it's serviceable, and it's definitely smooth, but I think the problem is that it is basic, and when you're doing it a lot, it does get a bit old after a bit, especially when you're just left-clicking over and over again. So this whole sequence here, this is about looking into like the memories and the strands. So this is just, again, a whole thing, a part of the story, and you can see the stop motion playing effect there. But yeah, combat's fun. It's casual. Again, a lot of this game, I think, is a very casual game, and the combat is casual in of itself, but it doesn't hold the fact that it does mean that, as well, the combat isn't super complex. There's not a lot of depth to it. Again, the abilities are fun, but they more just kind of add to the combat just slightly rather than give it more nuance. And in regards to the combat, you also have the upgrade system here. So the upgrade system is very linear. There's not a lot of room for, you know, player identity. You're kind of just following the path, essentially. And obviously, I'm not as far into the game, so I don't have more options yet. But eventually, as you can see with these empty slots, eventually I'll get more options to start upgrading things. But for the most part, these are just simply, you know, you can add an attack, or this does more damage. You know, it's nothing crazy. The upgrades are very standard. Again, most of it, it's just this now does more damage, or this adds an extra attack. That's really it. The upgrades are pretty standard. I'm gonna go giant axe here. I'm gonna float around. So yeah, the combat is fine. It's okay. Dodging is your only real means of negating any damage. There's a floof. So floofs here, these are upgrade points. This is where the game kind of encourages you to explore on the map. And that's another thing I'd say is the level design I think is actually really good. I've been exploring around the area, and every time I explore, I always feel like I'm getting rewarded in some shape or form. I never really feel that I've wasted time going somewhere. I always feel that when I've decided to go off and explore something, I get rewarded for it. And I think the game does a really good job on that. For the most part, the game, as I said, is linear. You are just following a certain path, which makes it a bit weird at first. It's like, oh, well, what's the point having a directional guidance system if the path's linear? Well, it makes it so that exploring, it really does help with that. Because, like, you know, normally going forward, I can go, okay, so if I keep going forward, I go to the objective, or I can go left, or I can go right, and I can go and explore and get some upgrades from there. So there is a lot of cutscenes in this game. It is, as I said, very story focused. You get a lot of platforming, you do get a lot of combat, but for the most part, the game is focused on its story. And for the most part, I do think the story is actually quite decent. Like, the whole thing is that she's what they call a weaver, and when a place is filled with, like, kind of heartache and bad emotions, stuff like that, weavers kind of come in, they kind of, like, sort that out. Especially when it comes down to people as well, when they have, like, these repressed memories that you're meant to try and solve. Once you solve them, you can kind of free the area in a sense. And I just had a recent event just before this where we were helping out some guy and helping him explore what went on with his brother and all things like that. And it was a really nice story. Well, not nice, like, it was actually kind of brutal, but it was a very well written story, I thought. The dialogue as well, I think, is quite... It can be quite hit and miss. For the most part, it's really good. It's really well written for the most part, but there's just been a few times where certain lines of dialogue has stood out and has made it seem a bit on the nose. But for the most part, I think the writing's pretty solid. The voice acting as well, very solid, especially the main character here. I really like her, and I think the voice actress for her has done a really good job. She's got, like, kind of this sassy attitude to her, but also a bit of a caring tone as well. So it means that when she's, you know, distressed, you feel for her, but when she's got kind of like these jokey, sarcastic quips, she's quite funny, right? I was a bit worried at first when hearing her that I thought we were going to get another Forspoken situation where we're going to get some very corny dialogue and, you know, just not very well acted. But no, I actually think the voice actress here is actually pretty decent. I think she does a good job on the role, and I think she does a very good job of knowing when to be serious and when to be sassy, and it really helps with this character. I'm not too sure. So we're going to go this way now. There's a little wildlife about. You see wildlife every now and again around this area. I'm just having a little explore here. I'm going to have to bring up my crouton. Aha. Got some more floofs. I will not stay... Stop saying floofs. Okay, that's what the items are called. I don't know why they're called that, but they are. It's quite funny. There's another floof. I'll make sure to keep saying it on the stream, because I think it's just very funny to say. Childish? Yeah. Do I care? No. Not at all. Yeah, regarding the whole collection of floofs and then the upgrade system, as I said, I think it's kind of a bit disappointing enough that the upgrade system is quite linear and not a lot to it, but it's also the fact that you have to wait at a certain point in the game to even get an unlock of it. So you just simply can't even upgrade if I want to. I have to go further in the story to even have access to that upgrade, which is a little bit disappointing as well.
Always wondered why Miss Pearl insisted on using real iron nails in her garden bed.
Fly down here. Oh, I don't like the fact that the car is moving there. You may be wondering about the water, why I'm not touching it. It's toxic. It will just do damage to you. Kind of gives a reason of the whole video game character can't swim and they drown as soon as they touch the water. Well, this one is video game character is dealing with toxic water, so they actually do not want to be in that water whatsoever. So you get like all these little notes as well, these little tidbits around the world. I actually think the notes are pretty good. I'm kind of somebody that's not massive fan of lore dumping in notes because, you know, at the end of the day, I want to play a video game. If I want to read, I'll read a book. But I feel this game actually does a pretty good job of summarizing a lot of its parts, as well as... Oh, can I get that? Nope. As well as making it relevant. Whenever I read a note, I'm not thinking, oh, okay, that was pretty useless information. Like, it builds on the world, or it gives you some more context of what's going on around you, and it's something I quite like. It feels that when I'm reading these notes, I'm getting something out of it. I'm gonna throw you here. Yeah, you help me out. There is also kind of in a God of War style, forgot to mention earlier in the previous combat, where you've got like the arrow system, so naturally in a third-person action game you're going to have enemies that are going to disappear off your screen, and the game does incorporate... Let's see if I can get him. He's gonna shoot me. Ah, there we go. The game does incorporate a arrow system to be able to be like, okay, it's red, so that means an enemy's going to attack you off screen, or it's white, so an enemy's approaching you. Thought I was able to get him there. As I said, it's... Again, I wouldn't say the combat's bad. It's not bad at all. It's, you know, it's weighty. When I'm attacking these enemies, like, you can feel, like... I can feel that the punch is happening. So it's not like the animation is bad or anything like that. The animation's actually pretty solid. Again, it's just more... The mechanics of the combat is just... too light for me. It's not something that... It's something that I can see I can get a bit bored of as I go along, or like it starts to feel a bit mindless. But I said, I definitely feel the game goes for a more casual option. It's looking for a casual audience, and I think that's kind of good. You know, I don't think there's a problem with that. And in fact, I would actually say this is the type of game that I would say would be a very good starter game. This would be a great game to like introduce somebody to video games with, because it's not too difficult. You can completely customize how it plays out. How can I not get this floof? What's going on here? Am I missing something? Oh, is it I have to go up there? Yeah, this definitely could be somebody's first game. There's so much to customize, and the game is so story-driven. And as I said, everything works, but everything is done quite basic, and I think that is by design. Like, the traversal here, it's nothing... You've got to be kidding me. There's nothing too complex about it. Like, when I'm gliding, there's no real lot of control I need to do. It's just pressing control to put the glider out, and then just WASD, you know, double jump in, combat. Everything is just kind of played out for you. There we go. I pressed F. I don't know why I did. Come back. I don't know how to bring him back. I'm just going to toss you away. Goodbye. Enjoy. But I think that's what goes to its benefit, despite it being so basic. It works well. Everything works well. It's fluid. The combat is fluid. The platforming is fluid. And that's what really saves it from just being so mindlessly tedious. But I can definitely see myself getting quite bored of the combat a little bit later on in the game. But I said, look at this. Very, very long view distance here. No texture popping, no issues. I said the foliage looks great. I was going to say the leaves do react for most parts. Yeah, they do react to you, which is great to see. It's quite nicely detailed. Textures look pretty good. And like it works well with the art style as well. Another thing as well is that the game does kind of fall under the dreaded yellow paint trope, but it doesn't use yellow paint. It uses like these web strands to show you where you can climb and all things like that. And I think that's perfectly fine. If you're going to use the yellow paint method, you might as well make it a more in-game, in-world system. And I feel this game has done that pretty well. I hate these bloody mushrooms. Fly across there. You can definitely tell a lot of effort's been put into the animations, especially the designs as well. I mean, look at some of these enemy designs, man. They look just great. I really like the enemy designs here. A slug hint. Ow. Thought I could just push him there. Here, Crouton, get him. I think another thing why I like this game, again, the art style really does it for me. And I'm a big fan of things like Coraline 9. It kind of reminds me of as well. I absolutely adore 9. And I really am enjoying like learning about the lore here. It's always fun to learn about new like mythologies and stuff from different areas that are not just the atypical Norse and Greek and all things like that. It's nice to learn a little bit more of other cultures. And you know, I definitely get a lot of like Hunt vibe from this. Hunt Showdown. Oh, get away from that. Ooh, big AoE. There's a lot of enemies here. And also, I know this is a bit of a weird comparison, but Princess and the Frog, the Disney film, also reminds me a bit of that as well, because that had a bit of a southern, it's focused a bit more on the southern side of things as well. Because obviously I'm a British guy, I'm not American, so learning about some American culture, it's not bad. It's pretty fun. Unravel you. I said I do think the story is great. I think the writing is very well done. I am curious to learn more about this game. I'm curious to learn about its lore. I'm curious to learn about the world and this whole Weaver system, because I think the Weaver system is a pretty unique take. I think it definitely helps makes it stand out. I messed up. Come here. Boom. As I said, my biggest highlight though, despite all this, again, is the music. The music in this game is phenomenal. I cannot recommend the music enough. It is so well done. It's got like quite a jazzy, fast jazz music, but it's also got a bit more variety. Like when we go to church, we've got some organ music playing and all that stuff. And there was this one sequence where once you discover what happens to the brother, the song is all about that brother and the lyrics are tied to that. And I think that's brilliant. I love the original music used to tell the story of what's going on in game, and it's not just standard music, if you get what I mean. Honestly, the music's brilliant. I genuinely believe that once I stop playing this game, I will probably listen to the soundtrack for this game, because I really love the soundtrack to this. I was just getting some more bad memories. Just wonder if there's any more gameplay elements. I guess the only real other thing you're missing is the chase sequence, but it's not really anything special. Again, unfortunately to say, basic. It's your standard run-of-the-mill chase sequence. It's, you know, nothing in this game is something that you haven't seen elsewhere. But it's something that I feel is just done well. And I feel as well that this is done well enough that for somebody who's more casual, or somebody that's not, you know, doesn't play video games as much, or hell, even if this is their first video game, I can definitely see this being a great addition for people to try out. This would definitely be a game that I would probably recommend if somebody was like, hey, you know, I'm looking for a new game to play. I don't play games that much, or, oh, I'm looking to get into video games, but I'm not too sure what to play. I'm not obviously mechanically sound or things like that, this might actually be a game that I would recommend. Good story, good gameplay, interesting art style and aesthetic. Definitely more fitted for a more casual audience, but again, I don't think that's bad. It definitely runs well, plays well. Would I recommend this game? You know what? Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely recommend this game. I think this game is insanely fun. I think it's a great casual game. You know, it's not stressful or anything like that. Maybe because I've been playing Doom Eternal recently, and that game has been a lot more stressful. Maybe it's a nice change of pace for me. And look, a cow. But yeah, I think it's a really fun game to play. It's a very easy game to play. There's a lot of great stuff to it. Good story. I said I love the art style and aesthetic of this game. If you're somebody who's also into this kind of thing, you're probably going to love this. The music alone, I think, is worth the recommendation. Absolutely adore the music. But the gameplay is pretty solid. Again, issue is that it's basic, but it's solid. It works. It's completely functional. The animations are great. The stop motion is nowhere near as distracting as I was worried it was going to be. I think it just looks beautiful, man. Even despite all this like damage and decay and all things like that, the game looks gorgeous. So many green and yellows and all things like that. The foliage looks amazing. Really good. So yeah, absolutely recommend this game. If you want to check it out, you can get it on Steam. You can also try it out on Game Pass if you have Game Pass, which is what I'm doing here now. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.